Hello, and welcome to the Exponential Growth Podcast, powered by Analyst Investors. I'm your host, David Olivencia, co-founder of Analyst Investors, and a passionate advocate for leveraging innovation and technology to drive success. Let's get started. This is Exponential Growth. I also want to give gratitude to Salvi Media. They're the founding sponsor of the podcast. They're a premier executive content agency dedicated to crafting exceptional content and strategies that elevate companies' brands and their executives. They're creators of the Emmy Award-winning CEO series. I think many of you have seen that. We've also featured one of my portfolio companies, Analyst Investors and Hallow, on their CEO series. And they've had in-depth interviews with CEOs talking about their personal journeys and business experience. The CEO series can be found on Cheddar, Entrepreneur Magazine, Reach TV, and really want to thank Salvi Media for their support of the podcast. You can also follow them on social media, as well as they have a podcast studio in Chicago. Join them as well. So again, thank you, Salvi Media, for making this podcast possible. Today's going to be a very special podcast. We have the honor to have with us somebody I've known a while. I'm almost too afraid to say how long I've known this leader, Kevin Klenk. We worked together at Ford Motor Company in like the year 2001, 2000-ish. We both worked in the technology part of Ford. And we had a special bond in common because we both went to Notre Dame. And you know, Kevin can talk more about it, but he's not only been to Notre Dame and graduated once, not only twice, but he's what they call a triple domer. It's an amazing career that we're going to jump into more, whether it's in technology and space and other places that we'll talk about more. But Dr. Kevin Klenk, welcome to the Exponential Growth Podcast.
Hey, David, it's great to be here. And I do think it might have been 25 or 30 years at this point. You know, the thing I was realizing, one of the fun memories I have with you, David, is you shared with me a set of cassette tapes on starting businesses.
That's right.
So I figure, you know, we're dating ourselves just by saying we shared cassette tapes on starting businesses and talking about exponential growth that far back in time.
Yeah, well, no, that's yeah, because even cassette tapes, 8-track tapes, it's amazing how just in the media space how it's grown. But you know, Kevin, you've got an amazing background and history that we want to jump into and talk about. And so let's I always like to start these just to talk a little bit about you. You know, we go way back, right? Whether it's Ford Motor Company and you've done some work with the Volvo car acquisition, and then let's start a little bit about there. Even before that, like where'd you grow up, and just maybe give a little perspective on that, and then we'll jump into Ford and why Ford or why Notre Dame a little bit would be great, Kevin.
Oh, so a little bit of perspective on it, David. So I grew up in the Midwest. I was actually born in New York, but then moved to Michigan when I was young, and ended up going to Notre Dame. So I went there. After undergrad, I worked at Dow Chemical for a few years, and then went back to grad school. And I ended up getting my PhD in an area called computational geometry. It's basically algorithms. It's basically the theoretical side of things.
So you were algorithms before algorithms became algorithms, huh?
Oh, come on. It was popular back then. But it was algorithms. But even at the same time, I was doing things in distributed computing. So I worked at Los Alamos. We worked on what became Internet 2.0. We worked on a project called the Digital Village, social media, online banking, and things like that. And afterwards, I was finishing up my PhD, and I started pitching companies for startups at that point. And one of them was basically about online advertising and how to measure it and how to track it and things like that. And one of the people I pitched to gave me some great advice. He basically said, move to a coast. I should have taken that advice. But it was also, they liked what I had, but they wanted me to be the technology guy and not run it, because the founder running the company back in the late 90s was not the thing to do. You had to bring in adult supervision.
Right.
And so my thought was like, well, darn it, I want control over what I'm building. And so I ended up looking at, well, should I do consulting? Should I do different things? And that's how I ended up at Ford. So I was one of the 2 PhDs they brought into their MBA program, where they were recruiting from Harvard, Wharton, Kellogg, and the top tier MBA programs. And so that's how I ended up there for 5 years, 6 years. And like one of the fun assignments was literally I got to be the person who goes over, we're doing the Volvo car acquisition. I got to do the business plan, decide how it was all going to work. And so I was over in Sweden for weeks upon weeks doing that. Soon after that, one of the assignments I had was starting up enterprise architecture at Ford. And that's when you came in almost the same time. And I was there. And fantastic experience. You know, the fun part, David, is I found our work at Metagroup and Gartner. Both have taken the Ford work and just ran with it. It literally, I was like, that's my slide. So it was fantastic to see that years later show up there. So that was fantastic. And then I left Ford for marriage, actually, David. So we got married at that point, and Ford was wonderful enough to give me a sabbatical. So they did.
I forgot about that part, but yeah, cool. So one of the great things about working for these big companies, you get to kind of take a year off. For those who don't know what a sabbatical is, right?
Exactly. It's a fantastic experience. And so I ended up coming out to LA, where Angela was at. She was at one of the big law firms around here doing.
Angela, your wife, correct?
Angela's my wife. Yes.
Just making sure.
And she was handling estates for call it the very wealthy, the sports team owners, the billionaire class of people. And so she was doing that, and we debated to move to Michigan or be in LA. And by the way, she's a domer as well. So she did not mind the idea of the Midwest. And I ended up asking for a tour of JPL, an insider tour, where I was like, well, I wanted to see like the Mars yard. I wanted to see and touch it while I was out here on this sabbatical.
And those listening may not understand what JPL is, what it stands for. Could you just give a quick thumbnail on that?
So NASA has centers around the country, and most of them are civil servants. JPL, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, is in Pasadena, and is run on by Caltech for NASA. And that's where you have all of your robotic missions to the planets. So if you hear about Curiosity, you hear about the rovers on Mars, you hear about deep impact, colliding with asteroids or comets and things like that. That's all coming out of JPL, all the robotic deep space work. We also had a series of antennas, literally 70-meter, like the size of a football field antennas, to talk to things like Voyager.
Got it. Cool.
And so
that's really cool.
It's cool. So I wanted to get a tour, and I asked a couple of friends, can I try this out, see what it's like there? And a couple of days later, they said, how about you spend a day interviewing with us?
Well, and by the way, I write this book on networking, and that's, jobs don't come from just like, this is like, you reach out, you connect, and you network, and this is how jobs happen. So please go ahead.
Yeah, that's exactly how they happen. And 2 days later, I had this job offer to work at JPL. And so I ended up deciding not to go back to Ford. I ended up being in Pasadena, working out of the South Bay. And that's fantastic, because where I ended up at JPL was running the full spectrum of computing at JPL, from cybersecurity to high performance computing research to the remote sites, making sure we have data coming back from places in Madrid and Australia and things like that to basically keep track of the rovers. It's basically what I like to think of it as the IT that matters.
Yeah, or the pets that are up in space, right? The rovers.
Well, it's also it's IT that doesn't just support the business processes, but it supports the research and innovation. It is it's basically the enabling factor to make the growth and the new ideas come to light. And
that's and then Kevin, one of the things I remember, you being a PhD and us working at Ford Motor, together, we were there really when Google was just starting, right? And I remember
That's right.
a fact that you mentioned to me way back then. I think it's because you were a PhD, but I think it was a statistic, and you say, hey, David, like 60 or 70% of the workforce at the time, or was like a PhD, or they had the most percentage of PhDs in the workforce at the time. And this was, this is like the year 2000, right? And they've just had an amazing, talk about exponential growth, which is podcast and how they run. But the deep minds, the deep thinking that were there. Was I about right, or what was the exact? Do you have any sense on
I
what that
don't
was?
remember the numbers, but they definitely were started by people out of Stanford. They appreciated having the right intellects, the new ideas, and they went after it because a lot of the things you see out of Google or even the AI companies are things that have been in research labs for a decade or more. And it's a
Yeah.
matter of realizing when the networking, when the computation and everything becomes viable to really do it at scale. And you
Yeah.
jump in hard at that point, and they were able to take advantage of it, seeing what they could do with distributed computing and search. And you're seeing it now with the AI models that suddenly things are fast enough. The scale with the cloud computing is big enough that they can do these things.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. I mean, and now with some of the GPTs and all this AI stuff, they're getting disrupted as well. And we'll see how it plays out. And then, on that one, Kevin, that they were a small company. We were working in a big company at the time,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, you talk about your career, just a quick thumbnail. I mean, you worked in big companies, small companies, just any kind of leadership insights, quick 30 seconds, minute on
Oh,
just,
the quick things about the big companies is really you're doing all indirect influence. You're basically it's trying to nudge the company forward, trying to work between the silos to get things to move forward in the company.
yeah.
So call it it's a lot of understanding the internal politics and convincing people to move forward. And
Yeah.
what I found more on the startup side is getting really good at saying no to things, keeping the focus on things, focus on, here, this is what we have to get done. All these other things don't matter, and just no to the things that don't matter and just keep the fire on. And that's what I see at the smaller companies.
Yeah, that's the full. I mean, the startups are getting hit with so many different things, and then how do you focus and I always, again, I've invested in 80 of them, right? It's how do you use your time the most efficiently, right? And saying no to a lot of things, and what do you say no to, it's vital. So that I totally
Yeah,
agree with you
yeah.
there.
I think
Yeah.
many people think it's money, but time is the most precious commodity.
You got it. You got it. All right, so your cool thing, you've been in space since before, space was cool. It's always been cool, but now I think it's really cool. Right? A lot of cool things going
Yeah.
on there. You've got deep insights there, and you've got a perspective also coming from other industries as well, which I think is cool. When you look at the space industry, what are some cool trends, techs that are out there? What do you see that's going to drive exponential growth in the next
Oh,
decade?
so David, I'm the computer guy. You're a PhD in computer science. I am going to double down on that. So, the few things that matter in my mind are AI. We're going to have it on the ground, and it's going to be up on spacecraft. The second thing is the ground systems. It used to be less important how good the ground systems were. And now your latency going to the things in orbit is lower, the bandwidth is higher. You can do things on the ground and take advantage of the AI there at scales and do things you never could before. The third thing, I have friends at SpaceX and things like that, and you have to get your mind around the change that's occurred when we went from, say, geosynchronous orbit, the big satellite sitting in one spot circling the planet. So these are huge, bus-size satellites, for broadcasting or various things.
Yeah.
And what they did at SpaceX, the Starlink satellites are in low Earth orbit. They're only going to be up there,
Yeah.
say, 5 years. The nice thing is they're, well, first thing, they're not just putting up one, they're putting up 6,000 of them.
Tons of them.
So it's tons of them. So that's the first
Yeah, yeah.
thing.
And this is how
Second thing is
they're getting not only coverage around the world for internet, but then you're getting the speeds increase as well, right?
right, because they're closer. So your latency going up and down is in a half second. It's much shorter due to the distance. But it actually has another huge advantage. If we're in low Earth orbit and you're only going to be up there 5 years, your worry about things like radiation hardening and things like that drop dramatically. So you're able to put in much more, call it current technology as far as the computer chips. You're running commercial things because it's not going to be there long.
Yeah,
And
and
so,
just on a side note on that, right? So when you say it's not going to be there long, right? So what happened? 5 years? What is it? What somebody told me this, and I wasn't sure if it like did they just like kind of fall out and then the atmosphere they just fizzle out and disintegrate? Because then on the other side, I've seen this show called Space Junk. You got all this kind of junk floating around, all these spare parts. All that. What the hell happens to these things after
oh,
5 years?
okay. So the things like the SpaceX ones, they're in low Earth orbit. They can do some maneuvering. They will deorbit at the right spot and they burn up in the atmosphere.
That's what it is. Like they burn up. So people are like that's interesting. That's kind of
Now,
interesting,
the,
right?
the bigger ones are much bigger, and they have to worry about where they're coming down. In fact, the biggest ones, they just, rather than trying to worry about deorbiting them, they just thrust them into farther out. So they're just, the
So
space
what,
is very
farther
big,
out,
David.
meaning that they're part of the space junk that's flying around, or what?
No, like way out.
Oh,
So
like,
it's they just,
like other universes out or whatever.
yeah, well, they're far enough out. It just doesn't matter at that point.
Doesn't matter. Okay. Okay. Well, cool. So I took us a little bit on a tangent, but go. We were talking about some of the technologies, and you were talking about the satellites, the low orbit, the latency, speed.
Since
Continue.
everything is your speed is going up between the satellites, your bandwidth to the ground, the latency to the ground, everything is dramatically better. So that way you could literally be in like rural Idaho and have pretty darn good internet. I mean, it might not be as good as fiber at the house, but if you can have a HD video at your house over a satellite link, that's good enough for many, many things.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I totally. Yeah.
So
No, I'm very familiar with that, and I think it
so
only gets better as you launch more, satellites up, right? And the technology of those satellites gets better. I think it'll be even, close to fiber. This is what I've been researching and studying, right? It's going to be close to fiber. Very close
absolutely.
in the
It's
next 5 to 10 years.
And it just gets better and better because since they're only up there 5 years, you're going to have the new generation up.
Yep.
And so it all is a nice feedback loop. It's faster, it's cheaper, it's better over time, and that's a change.
Yeah. So, so that maybe any other technologies, but then also like now it's about there's a lot of this change going on. Space is driving it. The podcast is also about like where do you invest or how should you think about investing in the space sector. But so any other technologies and then just your thoughts on investing.
Well, the space sector, I mean, is really interesting for investment because I have people ask me a lot about that. And in many cases, it's not about the technology. I mean, certainly you have to look at the technology readiness level about is it basic research? Is it something that you're ready to go to market on? But space is hard. It's really hard. And so you really need to look at the team and what they're proposing and can they get it to market? And can they do it fast enough given the costs involved? Mm-hmm. So the costs are very high. So you're having a harder time convincing people about putting in a lot of capital and things like that into a company. And you have to worry about, is the government going to pay for it? Is there a commercial company that's going to use this for something? And it's different than a SaaS company as far as, how much capital do you need? Well, they're like, well, I'm just going to run in Google or I'm running in Amazon. You just don't, you're capitalizing, the investment, but your actual stuff you're buying is less. And in the space industry, you're trying to like not have the thing blow up. on the ground, and you're building and you're doing that, and then you're trying to say, okay, now I'm ready to go, but it will likely be several years to do that. And you can read about, the government wants this stuff. I mean, that's clear. You can read that in the news. But it's hard because their acquisition cycles, they're working very hard to get out of call it a 5-year acquisition cycle. Yeah. And so if you are a startup who really hasn't nailed the product market fit for the government, and know the timing of it, and this is when they want it, you are going to be in a world of hurt.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's and if you think, and then if you look at any other, just when you think about private, public commercialization, or even like universities who are cranking out some great things here, or even at that intersection, any thoughts there?
Oh, I think in every case, it's all about, can the people execute it? Do they have the right team? Do they have the right ability? Especially, it's more costly as far as the interest rates now. You're not seeing any of the companies really want to pour unlimited funds in if they're not going to have a profit come out of it near term. And so it's about aligning on, what can we do given the timelines we have to have.
Got it.
And right then, now, the hotness is any money's going to be available for AI work right now. That's clear. But if you're in a deep tech, you're in those areas, you have to be much more thoughtful about, can you take this deep technology and get it to market?
Yeah. I mean, I think I think there's, when you think about space and just all this thing, right? You've got what's going, just the tech to literally fuel these rockets, right? And just all the different, call it rocket technology. You've got the robotics technology that's out there. You've got all the AI that's embedded through everything. I was even talking with somebody that said, how there's a bit of these rare earth minerals, right, that we have issues with, and we're going back and forth a little bit with China on this stuff. But there's the ability to hit these different planets, different asteroids and stuff like that, and also pull some rare earth minerals from there. And so just all the tech, the AI, you call it the hardware, the advancements in fuel, aerodynamics, all these different kind of tech areas. There's just so much opportunity in this quote unquote space.
There's tons of ideas out there, David. Some of this though is taking the ideas and making them real. And can they be made real on a commercially viable timeline?
Yeah, well, exactly, right. So kind of the other thing. So a lot of what we talk about is entrepreneurs and the experience and watching them from an exponential growth perspective. You and your wife, right, through the beach cities estate law. We can chat a little bit more about that, right? But there's on one side there's all the called entrepreneurs and startups there, or the law around that, and then there's also just these call it estate planning law, ultra high net worth. I always say they talk about family offices. When I was growing up, a family office was something I went to when I got into trouble. And now I hear all about these, not now, but I said maybe over the last 15 years or so, hearing all about the family offices and stuff. What motivated you guys to start this firm? And when you think about, call it tech, law, estate planning, how does it all tie together for you?
So there's a few things there. So Angela has deep experience on it. So she's worked in the big LA firms, working with the sports team owners and major people coming out of the entertainment industry and things like that. So we have the skill set for it. But then there is a lack in the South Bay, the beach cities, going, say, from Marina Del Rey, the coastal California, where the space industry is, the tech industry is, and Silicon Beach is, that really doesn't have people who focus on that market. It's basically get in the car, drive across town to Beverly Hills or drive to downtown. So there was a market opportunity there. That's the first thing. And then it's just a matter of recognizing and talking to people about the interesting problems they have, where you have the intersection of, call it estate law and other things, and alerting them, working with them to have them ask the right questions and encouraging them on it. It's kind of like when you're writing your all of your things you need for a startup. I tell people they said, what do you need to know? And I said, well, work backwards. Figure out how you're going to dissolve the firm, how you're going to sell the firm, how you're going to have your exit strategy in place when you start it. Mm-hmm. And that's the same thing with estate planning. It's like, okay, if you are successful, how do you pass that along to your heirs with minimal estate tax? And you have to do that up front. And just in the Angeles investors community, there's a lot of things where if you have overseas investors, they better be planning on their exit strategy up front, because the estate planning taxes are very different inside the U.S. than outside of the U.S. So it's a matter of...
Oh, no, yeah. And just like taxes, right? It's just the whole taxes, and then the next level of it was like estate planning and all that kind of stuff, right? My father recently, he passed away, and we, very, very, very humble beginnings, didn't have that, didn't have those issues, right? Actually, my sister and I, we had to pay for him when he passed. But as and I've been fortunate and blessed, as I look, right, there's just a whole tax management, and then all these, all these different laws, right? And then the next level, like you said, is kind of, just call it generational planning, right? And that's a whole nother area of where you need expertise and knowledge and really learning. I mean, for me, it's like a first time thing, right? So some other families have had that generationally; they can pass that on to each other. So probably no matter where they're at, you probably come across both sides of it, but it's very vital, very important.
Yeah, the families that once you get to the family office size, we typically will say, you should be working. We have our referral partners, for the ones of those size. But there's a lot of people who are in the $5 to $50 million range, call it, who are tech executives, people in the defense industry, in the space industry, who need that kind of planning up front, who aren't into the generational wealth yet, but should do everything correctly up front. You don't want to have your startup founders being worried about those things. You should have that be done just as a matter of course and do that. And I find, there's a strategy part of estate planning and an empathy part, because you have to empathize with the families. It's fun to do the networking, and it overlaps with, the people I meet in the space industry or the tech industry. And I also have call it the advisory business, and it overlaps nicely with the estate planning business.
Well, and then how are you balancing, kind of the entrepreneurial pursuits and what you guys have done, and then with just with everything that you're doing also in the space industry?
Oh, I'm not sure there's a good balance, David. The good part is at this moment in time, I know, I believe you've had at least one graduate from college. So I have recently. And so I have two who are juniors in college and one just entering. So the house is emptying. So that's a personal thing.
And I got one question though, that I should have probably known this. Where are they going? Are they going to Notre Dame? That maybe it's a more direct question.
No, they are not. They are competitors in some ways. So one of them is at Texas A&M.
Great school.
He is a junior. He's doing Navy ROTC, so he was just
Awesome.
out on a nuclear sub on the Atlantic. He is engaged. which is, I'm not old enough, David, but he is engaged to
Wow.
another wonderful Navy ROTC cadet who will be going into the
Awesome.
military when they graduate. The other one's
Cool.
at the Colorado School of Mines in Golden, Colorado.
Yeah.
So he's going to be an engineer as well. And the final one's going to college next year at University of California, Irvine. Where
Oh
she's
yeah,
looking
I did a
at,
lot. I did a
pre-med.
lot of work there, near there. I was doing consulting for a company called Softtech, one of the top, I'd call it services company based out of Monterrey, Mexico. And one of the largest clients in the area I was working was Broadcom, and Broadcom's got a big, offices. I think it's their U.S. office or whatever. Well, and yeah, it was like right there. So I had a lot of time in that space. Beautiful. I mean, it's really a beautiful part of the country, that Orange County there. So, well, cool. Congrats on that, on everything
Thank you.
there, uh,
So
Kevin.
what
It's
that
great.
gives me, the big thing there, Dave, is when you don't have any, call it taxi or driving duties anymore, I'm looking at that as I'm looking at it as some freedom to pursue these other things. Call it different phases of life. You have the phase of life where you're in grad school and doing basic research. You have the phase of life where you're doing the big corporate things at Ford. You have the big phase where you're doing space. And now I have a phase where, hey, I can do things like estate planning and expert witness work and things like that. And you tie together the different phases and interests over time.
Yeah, so you mentioned, and so expert witnessing. So explain that to our listeners. They may not know what the heck an expert
Oh,
witness is, and I assume you're doing this in the area of space and beyond because you got some interesting
well,
background,
things
and
like
and
things
having the
like
doctor by your name also, I think it helps. I think you walk into a courtroom and the Dr. Kevin Klenk, and they go, "Wow, this guy
it
knows a
it
ton. This
it
guy
it
knows a
it,
ton."
it, it it does help, but some of this it's really call it for VC advising, call a friend or PE advising or expert witness work. They're actually more related than you would think because everyone needs to have people who can explain the deep tech to others, make some decisions on it. When it comes to like the expert witness work, I'm not involved in it, but you can look at like the situation where you have Microsoft and Delta Airlines and God, was it CrowdStrike or whoever? They're all in a very nasty lawsuit about patching their software and cybersecurity methods and things like that. And since I ran cybersecurity at a national lab for many years, I can voice some opinions with some backup on those things, and you can look at that across multiple industries. So it doesn't really have to be space. It's things I try to focus on is call it things where it's deep technology. It is IT that counts, IT that matters. Things that it's not just an ERP system. Though I'd be
Yeah.
happy to talk to people about ERPs. But my niche is the stuff where it's like, okay, if it goes down, bad things happen.
Yeah, and you say those are the type of, call it, cases or consulting type engagements that you're most interested in, and is there anything
For
like,
for for
yeah,
for now, that's the focus right now, or call it
yeah,
startups in the space sector or startups in the defense tech sector who need to have some adult supervision. And I'm talking about little things like you need to establish cloud technologies. You want to run in various security levels for that, and it's hard. And there's a lot of tacit knowledge about where are those clouds? How do those clouds work? What's different about doing it in that space? And I can help out on those type of things.
no, I think just knowing the depth and breadth of your knowledge, yeah, I just look forward to seeing, what all the work, your great stuff you're going to do in
I
that
look
in
at
that
that, David,
space.
as behind the scenes. So the stuff I do, you probably won't see.
Ah, okay, got
So
it, got it, got it, got it,
these are all the things I help other people out.
got it.
Everyone deserves good help on their lawsuits. Everyone wants their startups to succeed, and that's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, and then, and with that background that you have, right? This is the Exponential Growth Podcast. And really, and coming from, your background, math, computers, all that kind of stuff, I truly believe that I don't think people totally understand that if you look hundreds of years, thousands of years, it's been pretty roughly linear. You can argue at the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years, we've kind of seen an uptick.
Mhm.
And I think now we're just I don't think people, this is call it the thesis of the podcast. I don't think people totally realize the amount of exponential change that's coming our way across multiple different, areas, right? And so when you think about it, I mean, you have an interesting perspective, whether it's in compute, in space, algorithms, right? Where you got deep background. What does exponential growth mean to you? And what would you tell the audience? Just why should they care about exponential growth? Why is it important? Kind of, and any
Oh,
advice
well,
that you give to leaders?
okay. So I'll start off with the leadership aspect of it, David. And I'll say that exponential growth is not just about scale. It's about compounding insight. Exponential growth happens when you build systems that learn and adapt. They don't just grow linearly. It requires architectures, people, and processes that can evolve, not just expand. So it's the team, the processes, and everything you're putting together in the architectures that are enabling that sort of growth. Because if you just want to get bigger, doing the same old thing, the pace of change is going to crush you at that point, because someone else is going to come along that can just run a little bit faster. You better have the team with you that can come up with new ideas and just are living within the playbook you have.
Yeah. And any other advice or even like, I guess, other advice for leaders or you call it mentors or mentorship or professional networks to kind of prepare those for this exponential growth curve?
So a couple things is, especially since I've worked so much in, I call it fast moving but regulated industries, don't let them paralyze you with the regulations. Those are some design constraints. They're not blockers. Bring in the regulators early as partners, and don't try to outsource the thinking. You want to have people who understand the tech and the policy, and if you have people who understand the tech and the policy, you have the path forward to build the exponential growth.
Yeah, I always thought, the policy part is important too, right? I always think, and I've done a couple things in DC and and there's this intersection of, tech, policy, the industry, and, you wonder when you're in these times of exponential growth, right? Can policy keep up with it, right? And, and there's some things, whether it's on the blockchain and AI that, our governments are working through, committees and all that kind of stuff, but sometimes they don't work fast. They take August off, and it's like then they're campaigning
Absolutely.
half the year, right?
Part of that, David.
If we're gonna, because, but if you don't have that, that's like the fabric for it, right? You need,
It's
things
if
run on
you're
top of
trying to, if you can get your architecture of your company right and the people and everything, and then you work with the policymakers to avoid a no answer. You don't want no. That's a very nasty word.
Yeah.
But if you can work with them and you can get to a yes if answer in every case, you have a path forward. You have a yes if, and they're giving you the path for that you can get through the regulatory and policy barriers. I'd say if there's one thing that I've learned across tech, law, and leadership, it's that the future rewards people who can connect disciplines and people. And you're the expert on connecting people, David, on that. And whether it's launching a mission to Mars, navigating estate complexity, or helping a startup scale, it comes down to clarity, trust, and thoughtful systems. And I'm just incredibly grateful to be on the journey with you, David, and share a piece of it.
Ah, well, thanks. And then how would you first question, how would you recommend people just kind of stay knowledgeable in these fields that are constantly evolving? What would you say that what are maybe best practices you do, and maybe how do they stay curious and keep up with them?
I think it's a matter of staying curious. I mean, have a childlike sense of wonder when you're looking at it. Be happy for the change. Be happy to investigate it. Seek out people who are fun and interesting to talk to, and have deep interactions with them. That's connecting with them personally, deeply. Be excited for what they're doing, because they might brush it off like, oh, I'm not doing anything interesting or exciting, and then you find out, oh, that's really cool.
Exactly.
Like I'll give you a one that not exactly, it's not space, it's not deep tech, but a friend of mine, I asked him what he's doing in IT, and he goes, oh, I'm doing a laundromat roll-up.
Oh yeah, I just had lunch with somebody today. That was the exact thing that we were talking about.
I was like going, it's like, is that, what's technology about that? And then he starts telling me, he goes, well, we had to basically put Wi-Fi and networking in all of these places, and then we built apps so that, he goes, the key is that everyone doesn't dry their clothing enough because they can't feed enough quarters in because they don't know how many they need to put in there. So when we have enough quarters through the app, you just punch it in, and everyone's going to just keep feeding the right amount for a change. And suddenly, the profitability leaps for the firm. Yeah. The technology is cool for it, and the people are more satisfied because their clothing is coming out dry. Right. And I found that a fascinating and wonderful discussion. But at first I would have thought, like, we're talking about laundromats right now, but it was a great discussion about applying technology in the most mundane manners, and makes you think about what you can do.
Yeah, and also what's coming as well, right? And there's so many, you think about the marketing around, even just like you roll them up and you leverage the same tech and the tools for marketing and, all the different functions, right? So it's stuff we learned back 25, 30 years ago with enterprise architecture. So Kevin, hey, it's been an honor working with you and being connected all these years, and then you taking the time off your busy schedule to just share some perspectives, whether it's in space, estate law, your career, leadership, tech, deep tech, expert witness, all the different things that we touched on. For those who are listening to you, who listen to this podcast, what are some of the social ways, social media or others that people can stay connected, follow you, reach out to you, etc.?
By far the best way is they can just go out to LinkedIn, Kevin Klenk, and you will find me out there. We can put a link to that in the show notes. And then, depending on if it's, Beach Cities Estate Law, easy to find. Klenk Advisory is less easy to find right now.
Right now, when it's going to explode, that's going to have some exponential
well, that's,
growth,
that's
so
just,
watch out.
That's my personal thing where I, I'm listed in various directories that way. But the Kevin Klenk on LinkedIn is by far the easiest way right now.
Excellent. Well, Kevin, again, thank you. He gave you the information, folks, on how to connect with him. Watch him. Some amazing things are coming. And again, Kevin, thank you. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, David.